This is a resin cast of a real skeleton, affectionately known to me as Steve. And Steve is very useful for understanding the anatomy underneath the human face and body. So when I'm doing a portrait or a live picture, I really like to try and think about the skeleton underneath. So Steve's great, but he has his limitations. He's completely devoid, as you can see, of muscle, ligament, and all sorts of other tissues which give the body form. So I do have a load of books for studying anatomy, but I find them very dry and I find it very hard to learn from. However, I have a fantastic tool up my sleeve, which is an exhibition in London in Piccadilly Circus of human bodies dissected partially and preserved by plastination. This is called Bodyworlds. So Bodyworlds first came to London 20 years ago, and I went to what was then a temporary exhibition, and they're back, and they do artists' days when you can go in and draw from the models. So that's obviously the best way, from my point of view, of learning, by really drawing from life and seeing what's under the skin. So I've made a video. This is one of the drawings I did at the exhibition, and I've included in this video a time lapse which you can skim over if you want. It's a 4-hour drawing compressed down into 4 minutes. So also at the end I will show you all the materials I used and talk a bit about lighting, talk about some inspiration, artists that I like. And also I'd like to share with you, have a look at Steve's face. Can you see this patch of light here? So this is called a Rembrandt triangle, and I'll explain that in the video. My love of the Bodyworlds exhibition goes right back to the year 2000 when I first went and I picked up this book, which was absolutely fascinating, all about the content of the exhibition, the history, and there's a brilliant section at the back on ethics. Really amazing, and it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. But in this book, they even have a reference to Mark Quinn's self-portrait, which was made with his own blood. And you may recognise that from 1997. And here is my late mother's catalogue when she went to the exhibition. And this is when the young British artists burst onto the scene. And here in the same exhibition, which was a real storm, there's Mark Quinn's head, is Jenny Saville. There she was at the beginning of her career. So I just think this is a fantastic exhibition, and if anyone is doing the portrait with genuine structural integrity, then I think you've just got to understand anatomy. So this is a lino cut that I did from an anatomy book, and it still informs my really recent work. You just can't fully appreciate the body without that sort of background. So I'm so excited about tomorrow, and I'm sure Steve will get his head around it. So we got up at silly o'clock and hopped onto the early morning bus from Bristol to London Victoria and arrived just as the sun was rising. Here's my gratuitous moment in a sunny spot in London. Guess where I am? There we go. So there's my partner in crime, the sculptor Lucienne Lassalle, and together we arrived at Bodyworlds, where we had a fantastic, warm, organised welcome by the staff who gave us our passes, and then we went downstairs to the horse exhibit. This is a publicity shot with Gunther von Hagens, and this is where I set up my easel. And this body, which was just over my shoulder, I felt it was watching me all the time. So here I am drawing, and you can see now the end of the first drawing, which is the graphite kind of warm-up drawing I did. I'm just evening out the shadow on the floor to make it recede more and be less eye-catching. So here's the final drawing. It was really a kind of practice to get used to the image and the shape of the horse and think about how the light was falling on it and how I wanted to capture it. So in the afternoon, after a quick lunch, I started doing the portrait of the horse proper. So this is on an A2 sheet of paper, quite large, and I start with a gesture and looking for the big landmarks, the big shapes, things like knees, hooves, and also the negative spaces really help to map out the picture. So the spaces between the legs, things like that. Once that's done, I like to start picking out the lightest lights using a white pencil, and different artists have different approaches, and I'll talk a little bit later about Rembrandt and his renowned approach to light. So having done that, then it's the darkest darks. And really throughout the drawing, but especially at this time, I'm making fine-tuning adjustments to the proportions, and at the same time trying to keep an eye on the formation of the bones and the tendons and ligaments and muscles and how they connect, and trying to see them kind of connecting through shapes. So now I'm putting on some of the flesh. First the warmer colours, and that sort of lovely orangey colour of some of the flesh, and then whether it's the light or the nature of the flesh, I don't know, but there's also a really nice cool pink that I could see. So I'm trying to pick out, as well as the big forms, some of the texture, the striations on the muscles, and looking at how the ligaments are grouped together and held in place by sheaths on the, particularly you can see it on the ankles, both of the horse and the rider. Yeah, really fascinating. And that back distant leg and the underbelly, I try to make them recede by darkening them a little bit and maybe evening out very slightly the detail, but that's less true on this drawing than I would do on a figure or a drawing of a cast, because this drawing is quite a bit about the detail, so to lose the detail in the shadows seemed a bit of too much of a loss. But still, you want to bring the foreground and interesting parts and kind of lead the eye to the parts of the drawing that you want the viewer to appreciate. So this is Rembrandt. You may remember I pointed out Rembrandt's triangle on Steve's cheek, and you can see there on Rembrandt's left cheek on our right there is a little triangle of light. And when I was looking very carefully at the horse, I noticed a little spot of light, and see if you can think where it was that I noticed it on the horse's anatomy. And I wonder if that was deliberate by the curators to avoid the area between the horse's legs just disappearing out of view. So now it's a few final details and setting up the background just to ground the horse with the beautiful shadow as well. And this is the final drawing. So back in my studio, and I wanted to just quickly show you all the tools that I used yesterday. Starting with my easel. This is a Julian classic. It folds up, it's really brilliant, and it packs down into this bag, which you can carry over your shoulder, with adjustable height, and this bit here adjusts. Excuse me, Steve. That comes up, so it's very handy. And then paper-wise, I used, I really like Strathmore toned paper, so this is their tan. So this is the one that I did the big drawing on, And for this drawing I used Derwent drawing pencils. They look like this, and I use a holder to extend the pencil a little bit, and also it extends the life of the pencil because you can keep using them when they're short. I've got this lovely, made by my daughter, wrap to hold my pencils in, and I always carry a knife for sharpening, putty rubber, and this is a very handy sandpaper tool. You could make your own for sharpening. So I just use a variety of the Derwent pencils, and I use Faber-Castell Polychromos for white. I just find that's really nice, and they're easy to buy. So that was what I used for this picture. And then for the black and white one, I'm not really terribly fussy about my paper. For white, I like to use a variety of pure white. I quite often use Bristol, but this isn't Bristol. So this is a Dana Rowney drawing paper, smooth. So here's the picture of the horse drawn in graphite. And for graphite drawings, I tend to gravitate to Staedtler Mars Lumograph. They're these blue ones, and I find they're just a really nice pencil. So I'm not that fussy, but if I have a choice, that's what I use. And I have this very, very special from the Museo del Prado pencil extender. And the pencil extenders are good because they mean that you keep your hand away from the drawing, so you get more of a constant view of the whole drawing, and also it helps encourage you to move from the shoulder and less of the down here. So I hope that I've covered everything. I hope you enjoyed that video. Thanks so much for sticking with it. It was a bit longer, this one. I really enjoyed the experience. Bodyworlds are brilliant. It's such a great way to learn about anatomy, and they really look after the artists. And you'll notice that Steve is back, looking quite cheerful. He's been a little bit clingy, but we're working on that.